What's going on guys, Mira here, back in another Genshin Impact video, and today we will be talking about Childe. So I did make a guide previously for Childe, but since the Hydro artifacts have been released, I have been farming for these artifacts and I wanted to showcase Childe again today. So I have been using Childe a lot over the past few days, and I gotta say, I'm really liking his damage output and his fast attack speed. If you guys do have Childe, I highly suggest building crit rate on him as he does need that critical hits to chain his Riptide Debuff. So first, let's take a look at his skills. His passive talent gives your team's normal attack talent a 1 level boost, which I think is really good, and it's one of the few passives that are offensive compared to the other characters that give you extra materials or refund materials or just help you find stuff in the map. His level 20 passive allows him to apply the Riptide Debuff, which we'll get into a little bit later, upon landing critical hits in his melee stance. And his level 70 passive extends the Riptide's duration by 8 seconds. Next, let's take a look at his skills. His normal attack is pretty standard except for his charged shots. On top of doing the normal damage, it also applies a debuff called the Riptide Debuff. Opponents that are affected by Riptide will suffer AoE hydro damage effects when affected by Tartaglia in various ways and is considered a normal attack. So if you hit enemies with another charged shots when they are affected by the Riptide Debuff, you will activate the Riptide damage. And when an enemy with the Riptide is defeated, it creates a Hydro Burst that inflicts the Riptide onto nearby opponents. For his elemental skill, he basically switches into melee stance and his normal attacks deal Hydro damage instead of physical damage. Attacking enemies with the Riptide debuff, which you can apply with your charge shots, will also proc the Riptide debuff for more damage. Now remember his level 20 passive talent. With critical hits even in melee stance, you will be able to apply the Riptide debuff as well. So that means you don't have to do charge shots to apply Riptide, which is great because then you don't have to switch stance to apply the Riptide anymore. For his elemental burst, there's different effects for both the range stance and the melee stance. The similarity is that both of them deal AoE hydro damage. However, if you do it in both stance, it applies the Riptide debuff and also returns some energy back to you. In melee stance, everything hit by his elemental burst triggers the Riptide Blast, which deal even more AoE hydro damage, and therefore it does do more damage if the opponents are affected by Riptide. The difference is that using his elemental burst in melee stance does not refund you any energy. Now before I show you guys my artifacts, I just want to give you guys a quick run through of my Childe. He is at Constellation 1 and using the Skyward Harp at Refinement 0. I wouldn't say that he's super well built, but he's pretty okay. Before the Hydro set was released, he was using 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Noblesse, but of course with this release, things have definitely changed. He's now using the 4-piece Depth of Heart and it has been working really well for him. This set of artifacts is a must if you are building Childe in my opinion because it is basically perfect on him. The 2-piece gives you 15% hydro damage bonus while the 4-piece gives you 30% attack damage for 15 seconds after using your elemental skill. This means that when you enter melee stance, you get a 30% attack damage bonus, and reversely, it also applies when you switch back into your bow stance, which will give you some pretty good normal and charged shot damages on your bow. So let's take a look at my Childe's artifacts. Ideally, you want to go attack main stat for timepiece, hydro damage bonus on goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on circlet. And optimally, you want attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage on his substats, which you can see I got pretty lucky with this flower. Now with that being said, energy recharge isn't too bad on him as well, especially if you have him at Constellation 6, which resets the cooldown of your elemental skill when you use your elemental burst. Not gonna lie, that's kinda busted. So next I'll talk a little bit more about his weapon choices. As I've mentioned before, I am using the Skyward Harp and this is the best weapon on him. It's basically made for him, and if you have this weapon, you should definitely use it on Childe if you have him. For his 4-star weapon choices though, I highly suggest the Viridescent Hunt as it gives him his much needed crit rate to chain his Riptide. For my free-to-play friends out there, Rust would also work as well. So lastly, let's move on to team composition. If you are using Childe as your main DPS and your Childe is not at Constellation 6, I would still suggest bringing another DPS on your team. Even with this new artifact's effects, he is still a little bit on the weak side in my opinion, when he does not have his melee stance up. It's not as much of a problem as it was before, so if you do not have enough space on your team or have no other units to put in, it's fine as well. Currently, I'm using him in a team with Diluc, which is the constant DPS, Albedo, which is the god tier support DPS in my opinion, and Jean as my healer. Now, I know this team is pretty overkill being fully decked out with 5 stars, so I'll show you some alternatives. So over here you can see this would be a pretty decent team to run with Childe, and as you can see it's all 4-star characters. Razor would be the constant DPS, which would be also another main source of DPS in the team, and you can run him alongside Diona for some insane superconduct damage. Diona also doubles as a shielder and healer for the team. Her elemental burst also gives Childe the opportunity to perma-freeze opponents. Then we have Bennett, which amps damage and also heals the team with his elemental burst, and this is basically a great team to try out if you have all these characters. So that is gonna be it for my Childe guide, and I do hope that this video has helped you guys decide what to build on your Childe. If you don't want to miss videos like this one, do make sure you get subscribed to the channel. Also, do let me know in the comments below who I should cover next. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!